The wind moved through the broken land like a ghost. All around were ruined, shattered towers, burned machines, and ships that once flew proudly, now buried in dust and silence. Smoke still floated in the air, even though the war had ended days ago. There was no peace, only emptiness. A single figure walked through the ruins. He wore an old scarf over his mouth and a heavy coat covered in dirt. His name was Ellis, a human scavenger. He was not a soldier. He never wore medals or followed orders. He came to places like this looking for scrap metal, old tech, anything he could sell for food. But today, he was not looking for things today. He heard something. Ellis paused near a fallen building, once a command post of the alien Royal Army. Its walls were made of dark crystal and blue steel, now cracked and black from blasts. As he stepped over a broken panel, he heard a faint sound too. Weak to be an animal, too soft to be wind. Tap. He stopped. Tap. Tapped. It came again, like someone was hitting metal from underneath. He dropped to one knee and pressed his ear to the ground. "Hello," Ellis called out. "Is someone there?" Number. Answer. But the tapping continued. Ellis grabbed his shovel and began to dig. The ground was rough and mixed with sharp pieces of metal. Smoke stung his eyes, but the tapping kept him going. Someone was alive. Someone needed help. He pushed himself harder, tossing aside debris till his fingers found something cold and smooth, a piece of armor. He dug faster after many long minutes. He uncovered part of a body. Slender arms, soft skin with a silver hue, and long white hair tangled with dust. Her eyes were closed, lips dry. Her breathing was shallow. She was an alien girl. Young. Her uniform, though damaged, still had a golden symbol on a royal crest. Ellis frowned. A princess. She was still alive. He gently pulled her free from the wreckage. She groaned in pain, but didn't open her eyes. Her legs were bleeding, one arm bent badly. Ouch. If he left her, she would die by nightfall. He could walk away. She wasn't human. Maybe she didn't even like humans. Maybe she was one of those who gave orders during the war. But Ellis didn't move. Instead, he lifted her carefully and placed her over his shoulder. Her body was light but weak. He walked away from the ruined camp and took her to his small shelter nearby, in between sharp rocks. Inside, he laid her down on an old sleeping pad. The place wasn't much, just a tent, some rations, and an old heating unit. But it was safe. He cleaned her wounds with water, wrapped her arm, and gave her tiny sips of water when she stirred. She still didn't wake fully, but she survived. The next morning, she opened her eyes. Ellis was sitting near the door, checking a map. When he heard movement, he turned. Her eyes were gold. Not angry, not afraid, just confused. "You're awake," Ellis said softly. She stared at him. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Why?" He blinked. "Why what? Why didn't you leave me?" she asked, her voice dry and cracked. Ellis looked down. "'Cause you were alive?" She stared for a moment longer, then closed her eyes again. Ellis didn't ask her name. He didn't ask what side she fought for or what crime she had committed. He only helped her eat and rest. She barely spoke, but each day she got stronger. On the fourth day, she sat up on her own. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice still quiet. "Ellis." "I'm just a scavenger," he said. "You're human." "Yeah, my people. Hate your kind." Ellis smiled slightly. "A lot of people do." She tilted her head. "You knew who I was?" "The crest. On my suit, princess, right?" She nodded. "Rebellious princess," she added, voice cold. Ellis raised an eyebrow. "Rebellious?" She looked away. "I stood against the war. My own father called me a traitor. I tried to stop the fighting. No one listened. When the bombs fell, my own guards left me to die under that building." Ellis didn't say anything. For a while then, he said, "Well, lucky for you, I didn't." She looked at him. "You don't even know me. I know you didn't deserve to die alone in the dirt." Silence passed between them. Finally, she said, "My name is Naira." Bliss nodded. "Nice to meet you, Naira." From that moment, something changed. Naira still kept her pride, but now her voice softened. She began to trust the human who had pulled her from death. For the first time since the war began, she felt a spark of hope. Outside, the world was still broken. But inside that small shelter, a strange bond had started to grow. Ellis didn't care about crowns or sides, and Naira didn't see him as just a human anymore. He was the only one who stayed. The wind outside had picked up. Sharp dust danced in the air, but inside the shelter, it was quiet. Ellis sat beside the heater, fixing an old scanner. Wires sparked now and then. Across from him, Naira leaned against the wall, her wounded leg. "Wrapped in clean cloth? This place smells like burnt plastic," she muttered, wrinkling her nose. Ellis chuckled. "Because it is burnt plastic. Half the tech I carry's been fried 3 times over." Naira gave him a small, tired smile. It was the first time she joked since waking up. Her golden eyes watched him work, her mind spinning with questions. This human had saved her, fed her, and now acted like none of it mattered. "You're not military?" she asked. "Nope. I was a technician before the war," Ellis replied without looking up. "After the invasion, I just started picking through wreckage. It pays in trade, if not in peace." Naira looked down at her hands. Her fingers still shook sometimes. She could remember the moment the ceiling caved in, the sound of her guards leaving without a word. "You should have left me." Ellis finally looked at her, maybe? "But I didn't. You don't know what I've done. You already told me you tried to stop the war. Failed." Ellis shrugged. "Maybe, but you're alive. That means you still have time to do something." "About it." Naira didn't answer. Gosh. Her thoughts were heavy. She once stood on palace floors giving speeches to stop the cruelty of her father's empire. She had freed prisoners from dark cells. She had ordered her guards to protect refugees. In the end, they betrayed her. Her heart was still full. A fire, but her body was weak. Even now, her leg burned when she tried to move too much. Still, she was healing. And that scared her more than the pain. Because healing meant living. And living meant choosing again. That night, while Ellis slept, Naira crawled out of the shelter. The stars above were dim behind dust clouds. She stared at the ruins in the distance, the burned palace, the broken towers. The flags half buried in ash dots. She whispered, "I'm not done." But she didn't know what to do next. A noise behind her made her turn. Ellis stood there, arms crossed. Watching her, "You walk well for someone with a broken leg," he said. "It hurts." "You're still doing it. I had to see the place again." Ellis nodded. He walked beside her and looked out at the ruins. "Ugly, isn't it?" he said. "It was once beautiful." "So were a lot of places." Naira stared at him. "Are you still here?" Ellis turned to her, calm but serious. "'Cause you need someone." She blinked. "But you don't even know me." "I don't have to. I saw you left behind." No one should be left like that. His words were simple, but they stayed with her. After a moment, she whispered, "Thank you." He went back inside. The next morning, trouble arrived. A loud hum came from the sky. Ellis stepped out of the shelter and saw a silver drone scanning the area. It hovered low, flashing red lights. He cursed under his breath and ducked back in. "We have to move," he said. "What is it?" Naira asked quickly. "Scout drone? Not human? Looks like a royal model. They're tracking survivors or rebels." Naira's face went pale. "They're hunting me?" Ellis didn't ask why. He only helped her pack. She grabbed what she could and leaned on him as they moved away from the shelter. Heading toward the canyon path where scanners rarely reached, they traveled for hours. Naira pushed herself, even when her leg begged her to stop. Ellis helped her over rocks, through mud, and into thick brush. They hid beneath an old ship hull for rest. "Why would they still hunt you?" Ellis asked softly. Naira looked at her hands again. "Because I stood against the Empire. They can't let me live. I know secrets. I know faces." "Did?" Ellis looked at her with new respect. "Then you're more dangerous than I thought." She gave a weak smile. "And you're crazier than I thought for helping me." They moved again at dawn. By the second night, they reached a small cave near a frozen stream. Inside, Ellis lit a small fire with broken fuel rods. Naira sat near the flames, her skin glowing faintly in the light. Ellis sat beside her. "What's your plan?" "I don't have one," she admitted. "No ship, no allies. I'm not even sure who survived. You can't go back to your people." "I don't have people anymore," Ellis thought for a moment. Then he said, "Then maybe you make new ones." Naira turned her head slowly. "What? You're smart, strong, brave, and clearly you're not done fighting." Naira looked into the fire. She didn't speak for a long time, but in her heart, something stirred again. Hope maybe it wasn't over yet. Maybe she had more to give. And maybe, just maybe, this strange human was the beginning of something greater. Ellis moved through the cave entrance first, scanning the area with his broken handheld tracker. The device gave out a low beep every few minutes, barely working, but still better than nothing. Behind him, Naira followed, limping a little less than the day before. Her body was healing slowly, but her spirit was rising. They had walked for hours through rocky hills and broken valleys, far from the ruins of the main battleground. This place was colder, quieter. The stars above looked clearer, and the sky was painted with soft silver clouds. "No sign of drones," Ellis said finally. Putting the tracker away, Naira leaned against the cave wall and took a deep breath. "They won't stop looking for me. The Empire always finishes what it starts." Ellis looked at her with a calm face. "Let them look. They'll have to go through me first." Naira frowned slightly. "You say that so easily because I mean it," he said. "Besides, you're not just anyone. You're the only person who tried to stop a war no one wanted." Naira sat on a flat rock and pulled her long white hair away from her face. "Ellis, you don't know how many people I failed. My words didn't stop the bombings. I couldn't change anything." Ellis sat across from her. "You changed my mind?" Naira looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "Before I met you, I thought all royals were the same. Rich, cold, sitting above the fire while everyone else burned. Then I found you, half dead, buried under rubble. Don, you apologized to me for causing trouble." Naira smiled for a second. "I still think you're a little foolish for dragging me out." "Yeah, maybe," he laughed. "But if I hadn't, who else would have done it?" The fire between them crackled softly. The warmth helped ease the chill, and for a while they sat in silence. Naira finally asked the question that had been in her mind for days. "Why do you care so much?" Ellis tilted his head. Honestly, because I know what it feels like to be left behind." Naira's expression changed. She said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "My unit left me when the bombing started. Said I wasn't worth saving since I didn't carry a weapon." "Just a tech guy," they said. Ellis looked down. "I was stuck under a burned transport for 2 days. I crawled out alone." Naira's voice softened. "I'm sorry." Ellis shrugged. "You're the first person I've told. I'm glad." "You did." They rested for the night in the cave. Ellis stayed alert, keeping an ear out for drone buzz or unusual sounds. Naira slept better than she had in days. The firelight flickered over her peaceful face, and for a moment, Ellis forgot she was an alien, a rebel, a royal. She was just someone who had been wronged. Like him, the next morning, they climbed a steep hill to get a view of the land ahead. What they saw made their hearts stop. Black smoke rose from a nearby ridge. Ellis grabbed his scanner. Military engines. Small unit, maybe 5 or 6 soldiers. "They're tracking something." Naira's face turned cold. "Me." Liz pulled her down behind some rocks. "They're not drones. Too slow, too heavy. They're ground troopers. How did they find us so fast?" Ara whispered. Ellis shook his head. "Maybe they picked up your old trail. Maybe they were just guessing. Doesn't matter now. We need to move." "No," Ellis said. Naira blinked. "What?" Pointed toward the smoke. "We can't outrun them forever. You're still recovering. If we keep running, they'll find us again and again." "Then what's your plan?" "We fight smart. We set traps." Naira narrowed her eyes. "You know how to fight?" "Know how to make things explode," Ellis said with a small grin. Give me a little time, and this cave will become a very bad place for them to enter. Over the next few hours, they worked together. Ellis dug shallow holes and filled them. With broken power cells and metal shards, Naira helped set up old wires from the broken scanner to act as a tripline system. By the time the soldiers arrived, the cave was ready. Ellis and Naira watched from a high ledge above the entrance. The first trooper stepped in, armor shining under the early sun. Behind him came two more, followed by a fourth. "That's a royal," Squad Naira whispered. "My father's best." "Well, then they won't expect someone like me," Ellis said. The first explosion hit as one of the soldiers triggered the tripwire. The ground shook and dust filled the air. One soldier went down screaming, his armor sparking. The others fired blindly. Ellis and Naira dropped behind the rocks and waited too. More explosions rang out as the others stepped into the traps. One by one the squad scattered, confused and panicked. Ellis aimed an old flare gun pointed at a fuel tank they had placed earlier and fired. A loud boom echoed through the valley. Flames burst out of the cave, pushing smoke into the sky. When the fire cleared, only one trooper remained. He crawled away, bleeding and coughing, leaving his weapon behind. Naira stared at Ellis, amazed. "You just destroyed a royal squad." Les gave a tired smile. "Told you I knew how to make things explode." Naira looked at the sky. No more drones. No more smoke. For now, they were safe. But something had changed in her heart. "Ellis," she said, turning to him. "I don't want to run anymore." He nodded. "Then we fight." Naira held her chin high. "It's not just for me. For those they left behind. For those who still suffer under the Empire." Ellis looked at her, eyes steady. "Then let's give them something to fear." Together, they walked away from the cave. No longer just survivors, but something stronger. The wind carried the scent of ash as Ellis and Naira moved through the valley. The land ahead was wide and empty, filled with broken ships and twisted steel. The sun peeked through dusty clouds, lighting the trail of their footsteps. Naira walked. With more strength now. The pain in her leg was still there, but she pushed past it. Her thoughts were sharper. Her heart was no longer heavy with fear. The fire inside her had returned. Ellis led the way with his old scanner in hand. "We're heading for the relay station, about 2 miles north. If it still works, we can tap into the old comnet." "Why there?" Naira asked. "Because you need to speak, and they need to hear you." Naira looked at him, unsure. "They won't listen. Maybe not all, but some will." "What?" "And some is enough." They reached the broken relay station near evening. The tall tower had fallen sideways, wires hanging like vines. The entrance was cracked, half covered by rubble. Ellis climbed through first and cleared the way. Naira followed him into the dark chamber filled with dust and blinking lights. "Power. Still hums here," Ellis said, wiping off a control panel. "Not strong, but enough." He worked quickly, fingers dancing over the keys. Sparks flew once or twice, but the screen came to life. A soft voice whispered from the speaker. "Connection open. BROADCAST available." Naira stood still, heart pounding. She had once spoken before thousands, in palace steps, in courts, even in front of her father. But this was different. Now she spoke as no one, no army, no crown. Ellis handed her the mic. "Just speak." Naira closed her eyes and began. "This is Naira of the royal bloodline," she said, her voice steady. "You were told I died. I betrayed my people, that I stood against my family." She paused. "Those things are true. I did betray the Empire, betrayed it because it was wrong." Somewhere far, receivers lit up. The war was not meant to protect us. It was meant to destroy others, to take what was never ours. I saw it. I tried to stop it. They called me a traitor, and they buried me under the ruins. Ellis watched her closely. Her voice grew stronger. "But a human found me. A stranger. Someone who had every reason to leave. He didn't. He stayed. He helped me stand again." She looked into the dark, like she could see the stars. "So if you hear this, know that I am alive, and I will not be silent." Are others out there, others who wanted peace but were too afraid to speak? Now is the time. Stand with me. She lowered the mic. The room went silent. Ellis leaned back. That was something. Naira gave a weak smile. Do you think anyone heard it? Ellis nodded. I know someone did. Just then, the screen blinked. Incoming message detected. Ellis quickly tapped the keys. Ah, a fuzzy voice came through. Rough, but clear. Princess Nira. This is Commander Vol of the 8th Fleet. I thought you were dead. Naira's eyes widened. Commander Vol, you served under my brother. Yes, the voice replied, when you disappeared. Deserted, couldn't follow orders that didn't feel right. Naira stepped forward. Are you with anyone? Psst. There's a group. Not large, but loyal. We want peace too. Naira looked at Ellis, then back at the screen. Can you reach us? Send coordinates. We'll come. Ellis smiled. Told you. They left the station that night and camped near a broken ridge. Naira stared up at the sky, her thoughts spinning. Others were still out there, waiting, hiding, hoping. Ellis sat beside her, warming his hands near the fire. You okay? He asked. Naira nodded slowly. I'm just not used to feeling useful again. You're more than useful. You're dangerous now, she smiled. Good. But their moment of calm didn't last long. Just before dawn, the ground shook with distant thunder, not natural heavy footsteps. Machines. Ellis grabbed his scanner. Red dots appeared on the screen. Drop troopers, he said quickly. Not the same ones from before, different squad. Heavier. They must have traced the signal, Naira said, standing up fast. Looks like your speech made someone nervous. They packed quickly and moved out. This time, they didn't run blindly. They chose a high ridge where the rocks gave them cover. Ella set up an old beacon device with a delay timer, hoping to lead the enemy in the wrong direction. As the sun rose, 5 armored drop troopers entered the area where the signal had bounced. They fired their scanners and followed the fake trail. Ellis and Naira watched from above. You think they'll fall for it? She asked. Ellis grinned. They already did. They waited until the last trooper was out of range. Then they moved again. By nightfall, they reached a flat clearing surrounded by rock spikes. Ellis set a fire. Naira looked toward the stars. If Vol shows up, she whispered, this might become something real. Ellis nodded. Then we make it real. Naira sat close to him, not for warmth, not for safety, but because he made her feel like more than just a fallen name. She had once stood alone, but now she wasn't. A soft humming filled the air before the light appeared in the sky. The sound came from the east, slow and steady, like a quiet thunder floating above the mountains. Ellis looked up from where he stood near the fire, eyes squinting toward the sky beside him. Naira rose from the rock she had been sitting on. Her hand rested on the hilt of a small blade, the only weapon they had. That's not a patrol ship, Ellis said quietly. Naira nodded. That's him. The lights grew larger, and a small vessel appeared above the cliffs. It was worn down, patched with mismatched plates, but it flew steady. The ship circled once before landing in the open field nearby. Dust and dry leaves spun in the wind as the engines slowed. The hatch opened. A tall alien stepped out, armor dark with red markings. His face was lined, his eyes sharp. He held no weapon in hand, but the way he stood showed years of command. Commander Vol, Naira said with a voice full of memory. He looked at her, and his hard face softened. Princess, I feared you were truly gone. Naira stepped forward. I came close. Vol turned his eyes to Ellis. This is the human who pulled you from the ashes. Ellis gave a small nod. Name's Ellis. Vol stepped forward and offered his hand. Ellis shook it. You saved someone our whole empire turned away from, Vol said. That means you have my respect. She saved herself, Ellis said. I just gave her the chance. Naira smiled slightly. More figures stepped off the ship behind Volfor soldiers and a pilot. They looked tired but alert. Each one gave Naira a silent nod of respect. They were few in number, but their eyes showed loyalty. Inside the ship, Naira sat down at the table with Vol and Ellis. They placed a small map device on the table, showing different zones across the region. Our people are scattered, Vol explained. Some still believe in the Empire. Others know it's crumbling. What we need is a voice to bring them together. You think that's me? Naira asked. You're the only one left with the courage to stand against your father and speak truth, Vol said. Many remember your words before the war. They didn't listen then, but now they're ready. Naira looked down at the map. Small blinking lights marked outposts, camps, broken cities. So many places that once held life now stood in silence. We don't have enough people, she said. Ellis leaned forward. We don't need many. We need to be smart. Symbols, Vol added. Communication towers, supply chains, and places where the Empire still shows its power. If we hit them, we remind others that the Empire is weak. Naira nodded slowly. Then we give them a reason to believe again. They made their first move the next night. Naira, Ellis, Vol, and 2 of the loyal soldiers approached an old supply base hidden in a canyon. The base still flew the Empire's flag and controlled food and medicine routes across nearby zones. We're not here to destroy, Naira reminded them. We're here to show that the Empire's control is fading. Day. Moved under the cover of darkness, Ellis used his tools to cut the power quietly. The lights inside the base flickered and died. Confusion spread among the guards. Vol and his team took position, locking doors and securing the outer area. Naira walked into the main hall, her cloak blowing behind her. The guards who remained were too shocked to resist. You followed a broken command, she told them, but it's not too late to choose better. Some dropped their weapons. Others froze in fear. Ellis broadcasted the event live across the network. He used a small device to stream Naira's image and voice, showing her walking through the base comm strong and unafraid. This was once a place of control, she said, facing the camera. Now, it will be a place of help. We will no longer serve those who rule with fear. We will stand for each other. The message spread quickly. By morning, 3 more camps had sent signals of support. They raised white banners in the name of peace. Her name Naira turned to the airwaves, whispered in places that once stayed silent. Ellis watched her speak to the new recruits and former guards. She had changed, not just her words, but her presence. The fire that once burned quietly now lit the way for others. Later that evening, as they sat on top of the supply base under the stars, Naira looked over at Ellis. You believed in me before I believed in myself? Ellis gave her a small smile. Someone had to. I'm glad it was you. They sat quietly for a while. The stars above seemed a little brighter. Naira whispered, Do you think it's possible? What? To rebuild something better.
Ellis
Looked around at the once cold base, now filled with quiet voices and healing people. Yeah, he said softly. Do. But not all eyes in the galaxy looked on with hope. Far across the stars, a message reached the royal throne. Naira was alive, and Wershi was rising. The royal throne room stood tall, surrounded by polished black walls and golden banners. Silence filled the air as high-ranking officers bowed before the emperor. His face was cold, carved by time and power. His eyes stared at the screen in front. Of him on that screen, his daughter, Naira, spoke to a crowd of people at a reclaimed base. Her voice was calm, her message clear. She was alive. She was no longer hiding. The emperor's fingers tightened on the armrest. Send the Dreadwing, he said. But your majesty? One officer stepped forward nervously. That's a capital ship. Surely, I said, send it, the emperor repeated. Burn her and all who follow her. There will be no second rebellion. Officer bowed and left. The message was clear. Meanwhile, across the stars, Naira stood before a growing crowd. The old supply base had become a stronghold. More ships had arrived. More voices had joined her cause. Deserters, families, survivors, even traitors from neutral systems. Ellis walked beside her, holding a scanner and a small tablet. "You're becoming famous," he teased. "You know that?" "I didn't want fame," she said softly. "I wanted truth." "Well," he said, pointing at the tablet, "Truth has about 8,000 new followers since yesterday." Naira smiled. "And you?" "Still a scavenger with a very unusual life," he replied. Vol joined them with serious eyes. "We have a problem." "What is it?" Naira asked. "A Dreadwing-class warship is heading this way. It broke orbit." Around the capital, just hours ago, Naira's face changed. She had seen those ships before. Massive, unstoppable weapons that floated like monsters in the sky. One Dreadwing could destroy a whole colony. "They're not sending a message," she said. "They're sending death." Ellis stepped forward. "Then we need to move." "No," Naira said. "We stay." "Naira, this is what we've built," she said. "If we leave, we show fear. If we stay, we show that even something small can stand against power." Vol nodded. "Then we prepare." The next 2 days were spent in hard work. They turned the base into a trap. Old shield generators were dug up and recharged. Entire turrets were repaired. People trained with weapons again. Others carried water and food, helping the wounded and the weak. Ellis worked night and day, fixing devices and building defenses from scrap. Naira never left the command tower, sending messages across systems, calling for unity, calling for courage, and the Dreadwing came. It appeared above the sky like a giant shadow. Its engines roared, shaking the ground. Lights flashed across its hull, its cannons aimed down toward the rebel base. Ellis stood beside Naira on the command tower. "It's beautiful." "In a terrifying way. Don't admire it too much," Naira said. "It wants us gone." Vol gave the first order. Shield. Barriers rose across the base. First shots fired from the Dreadwing, hitting the barriers with loud blasts. Energy sparked in the air. The people didn't run. They stayed in position, ready. "Target the left engines," Naira shouted. Turrets turned and fired. Blue beams hit the Dreadwing's engines. The massive ship shifted in the sky. Ellis watched. The readings shields are holding? Barely. Our shots came down. The ground shook. One turret exploded in flames. A medic station was hit. The fire was quickly put out. Then something unexpected happened. Ships appeared on the horizon's mall, fast, and marked with Naira's new banner. Rebels from other systems. Those who heard her call, they came. Naira whispered, "Told you," Ellis said with a grin. The new ships attacked the Dreadwing from the sides, striking its weapons and engines. It fought back, but its power was split. The rebel base kept firing. Sky lit up with fire and smoke. One engine burst on the Dreadwing's right wing. The ship started to tilt, pull back. Vol shouted to his people, "It's falling." Dreadwing dropped like a wounded beast, crashing into a far mountain. The explosion lit the sky, and the ground shook for miles. Then silence, people stepped out of bunkers. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Medics ran to help the injured. Naira stood on the tower, eyes wide, heart pounding. They had survived. They had won. Ellis walked up beside her. "You're not just a rebel anymore." "What am I then?" we asked softly. He smiled, "A leader." Next day, messages poured in, not just from rebels, but from former Empire officers, colony leaders, even neutral worlds. They didn't want war anymore. They wanted peace, and they wanted Naira to lead it. She stood in front of her people and said, "We are not building an empire. We are building trust. No one will be left behind. Not again." Cheers rose around her, and as the sun rose, Naira looked at Ellis. "You stayed when everyone left me." "I did. You saved me." Ellis shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could." Naira reached out and gently took his hand. "Then let's build this new world together." They stood side by side as the future came to meet them, full of hope, full of change, and no longer alone.